right, holy crap, breaking news. The government specifically failed radical climate activist minister Stephen Guilbeault. One hell of a title. He has just said live on the air that he does not care what other parties think. He will not be held hostage in order to get more out of the Liberal government. Whether that triggers an election or not, the Liberals do not care. They are standing up for Canadians, for the small guy, and they're going to keep doing what they think is right, which means that, remember what the Bloc said, if we don't get what we want by the end of October, specifically the 29th, we will call a vote of non-confidence. And last time I checked, it's almost October 29th. Woo! Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage y'all to smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. Shout out to everybody who has gone down to the link in the description or potentially even the comment below if I remember to put it there to get yourself a sticker, and to all existing and new channel members. Without further ado, let's get into it. So I like to do this at the start of every video. I know it's repetitive for those that have seen it, but sometimes the casual viewer has not seen it. Here's the poll updates. You got the Conservatives at 228 projected seats, bottom line of 200, top end of pretty much all the seats, or close to it, 247. Liberals, Justin Trudeau at 53, the Bloc at 42, and NDP at 18. 99% likely across the board winning the most seats and odds of a majority government. So everything there is looking good. What's not looking good is what Stephen Guilbeault just said to Vashi on a Power Play episode. We're not going to be held hostage simply to extend the life of our government to something that makes absolutely no sense from a fiscal and from a social point of view, said radical climate activist minister Stephen Guilbeault. Wow. And this is in response to the Bloc Québécois demand to boost old age security or risk losing their support in the House of Commons. Holy smokes, totes, magoats, folks, it's here. This is it. We are in the final countdown, the final days, the final weeks of seeing a Liberal government.
I wanted to ask you one more question about in your capacity as a Quebec minister, and it's about essentially what's been going back and forth with the Bloc Québécois, and especially their proposal to boost old age security. As a minister of Quebec, are you okay with the Bloc determining government policy?
No, absolutely not, which is why we voted against this. So their proposal, we're certainly in favor of supporting seniors, which is why we brought back the retirement age from 67 years, which the previous government, Harper government, Conservative government, put in place to 65. We've put in place a number of measures to support seniors, but what the Bloc was proposing was fiscally irresponsible. It would cost $3 billion per year, and in many cases, it would go to people who don't need it. So we're certainly, and we've agreed to sit down and talk with the Bloc in terms of what other measures that we could put in place, but it was poor public policy, and we voted against it. We're not going to be held hostage simply to extend the life of our government to something that makes absolutely no sense from a fiscal and also from a social point of view.
So just to be clear, if you do put something more on the table through working with the Bloc, it will be outside of this measure specifically?
It won't be what the Bloc has proposed. So I'm not obviously personally involved in those conversations. I'm the environment minister. I'm not the minister responsible for seniors. But we have spoken about this as a collective, and we're willing to work with the NDP on this. Unfortunately, the Conservatives aren't interested in working on this with us. But so it's not the fact that there's no more formal agreement with the NDP doesn't mean that we're not talking to the NDP, doesn't mean that we're not negotiating on specific elements. I certainly am on a number of my bills and initiatives that the NDP want us to deliver. The oil and gas cap, for example, very important for the NDP. Well, we need their support if they want us to put this in place. So those conversations are continuing with many of the parties in the House of Commons, with the obvious exception of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Wow, it is going to happen, folks. They are not backing down. They're not showing any wiggle room. They 100% are dead serious when they've said, when now Chrystia Freeland, I certainly believe what Chrystia Freeland has said, that prorogation, prorogation, what a weird freaking word, is not on the table. I 100% believe her now. I know she lies about pretty much everything. And now because we've just heard that they are not going to be held hostage. They aren't going to be held hostage. They're going to keep doing what they're doing. And if it triggers an election, it triggers an election. And they think that because they, in their eyes, have been doing the right thing, Canadians are going to vote them back in. And this is just crazy. I mean, good for them for sticking true to their level of delusion. It might actually fix Canada in the long run because, you know, should there be an election, it most certainly will not be favorable. But again, I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. This makes me happy. It brings joy. It brings joy to my face, as you can see. Now let's take a look at what the front bench on CTV has to say about this.
So that was the Minister of Environment and Climate Change today, speaking with CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos. That interview is set to air Sunday on CTV's Question Period. Now, Stephen Guilbeault made it clear extending the 10% top-up of old age security to seniors between the age of 65 and 74 is not on the table. But it's one of two demands by the Bloc Québécois in order to support the minority government. So if the Liberals won't play ball with the Bloc, can Prime Minister Justin Trudeau count on the NDP now? Here's Jagmeet Singh earlier today.
When it comes to confidence zones, we've been very clear. We're going to look at each vote as it comes. But I'm letting people know that right now, after this bill, this historic bill has been passed into law, it is now the law of the land. I want to see these deals signed. So I'm letting Justin Trudeau know, I'm letting the government know, get the deal signed. Let's make sure people get access to free birth control and free diabetes medication.
So as he mentioned there, the pharmacare bill is over the finish line, but clearly a lot more work to do. So does that mean that Singh will continue to prop up the government until those deals are all signed, or is the government out of so-called dance partners? Let's bring in our dancers on the front bench. Sabrina Grover, she was a federal Liberal candidate in the 2021 election and senior advisor at Spark Advocacy and North Hello. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to all of you. Gerdeton, let's start with you. Help us flesh out what your brother is saying there. Is the NDP going to pull its support for the Liberals if those pharmacare deals still hang in the balance?
Well, let's first start off by talking about what a misstep the Bloc Québécois has done on this. They had an opportunity to actually push something forward, and they clearly did not play their cards correctly, and they squandered what little limelight they had in a moment to advocate and push for issues, and they clearly did not negotiate it well. The ball is back in the hands of the NDP, and the NDP has been pretty clear across the board. They said that they're going to negotiate bill per bill, and there's clearly some indication from the leader of the NDP today that there's a priority around signing deals around pharmacare, very historic signing of legislation where now diabetes medication and birth control will be available to Canadians across the board, as long as those deals are signed with the provinces. So I think it's going to go vote to vote.
But once that happens, once they get what they want, which the NDP is pretty much already there, then there's nothing else for them to stick around for. And you had, I believe it was, I think it was the NDP and the Liberals, or maybe it was actually, there was some Liberals that went rogue and voted in favor of OAS, and then NDP also voted in favor of OAS. The only ones that didn't were the Trudeau minions, right? The main Liberals. And so I don't believe that the bill actually got put forward for what they wanted. And so this is just craziness. What's going on here, man? You're seeing that the tides are shifting. People are trying to get something out of the Liberal government that they want. The NDP has really, really twisted the arm of the Liberals. They've done a good job from a strategy standpoint of doing that and holding us, unfortunately, hostage, 41 plus million Canadians, to this very corrupt and coalition-esque government. But now they've gotten what they wanted, and the Bloc is not getting what they wanted. And they've said, come October 29th, the time is ticking, Mr. Trudeau. They're going to call that vote of non-confidence. And it's likely, in my personal opinion, that you are going to see the NDP at that point say, okay, let's do it. There's nothing else that we can get out of this government. Nothing. Like they're exhausting all of their paths, right? So I'd love to know your thoughts down below in the comments, but I'm extremely optimistic. This is fantastic news for me.
As described by the leader, and we'll see if the Prime Minister takes a pretty clear note from the leader of the NDP. get those deals signed, and potentially there'll be some more ability to negotiate. We don't know. We'll have to see as the bills come, as the opportunities and the votes come forward.
Yeah, but Gerritsen, I'm just trying to dig into this here for a second. So does that mean until all those deals are signed that the NDP will still be there supporting / prodding the government?
Well, you have to ask the NDP for that specific answer. I think what based on my analysis and based on my opinion, what you're seeing is the NDP having a very clear indication of what a priority is, and very clear that right now there's a historic expansion of healthcare to include medication. We're talking about universal access to diabetes medication and to birth control. And so there's a clear indication from the leader in the NDP, get the deal signed, and we'll see what further support can be there.
Sabrina, I want to go back to what Stephen Guilbeault said, and he was very unequivocal with what the Liberals are willing to do with the Bloc Québécois. How do you see how he's drawn that line in the sand?
You know, I think Mr. Guilbeault is very free to express his opinion. Obviously, he's a member from Quebec, and so I think he's got some personal, feelings about how this unfolds and the Bloc personally as well. But I think that I would take Karina Gould at her word. She's the deputy House leader, she is the House leader, and I think that her stance has been very clear that negotiations with the Bloc aren't off the table. What is off the table is passing a $16 billion bill through a private member's bill, which I think is fair and reasonable for the Liberals to take that stance. I think if there is an opportunity to negotiate on OAS or on other advantages for seniors, whether that's through GIS or other modes of income supplement or anything else that might ease the life of a senior in Canada, I don't think that's off the table. And I think that Minister Gould has made that very obvious and very clear. I think, there's always MPs that are going to have different stances, but I don't think that that's fully the direction that the government has intended to go or has stated that they're going to be going.
So, Sabrina, do you think that Minister Guilbeault was speaking out of line here?
I don't think he's speaking out of line. Like, as I said, I think
he's speaking from the heart.
Own opinions, and I think he's taken, this stance, and I think he's got some, strong views on it. But I don't think that he's the one necessarily responsible for negotiating with the Bloc or putting this legislation forward. And I think what the government is doing in the House, being led by Minister Gould, is more likely what I think will end up happening.
So, Melanie, do you think that either Minister Guilbeault or the Liberals, because I think at this point it's a little unclear where they stand on this, are they making a mistake by drawing such a hard line in the sand with the Bloc?
I think they're absolutely making a mistake. I think that Stephen Guilbeault is on, he's on a tear. He's just continuing his streak of being awful. This started, a few weeks ago, or actually maybe it was a couple months ago now, when he was overheard in the Ottawa train station speaking loudly about whether or not the Prime Minister should step down or not, and then his handling of the horrible situation in Jasper has been terrible, and now this interview. I think that this was absolutely a mistake for two reasons. One, the Liberals have revealed, or Guilbeault has revealed anyway, that the Liberals don't have any plan for seniors and for affordability. They're offering nothing else in place of the Bloc's OAS plan. And then the second thing that they've done is they've shown their cards. The Bloc had guaranteed them safety until October 29th. And the Liberals could have used, and probably were planning to use up, all of the opposition day motions in that time and burn up the opportunity for the opposition to bring confidence votes against them. And now they may not be able to do that because the Bloc has seen the Liberals' cards and they know that they're not going to play ball anymore. So the real question is, what is the Bloc going to do next week? Is Blanchet going to take this sitting down? I don't think so. That's not the kind of man that he is.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Bloc Québécois also had an opportunity, Rachel, to help unblock Parliament right now. And Yves-François Blanchet made it clear that, look, I'll help you unblock Parliament as long as you meet my two demands. And it doesn't seem like there's going to be any movement there.
Yeah, that's what I find really fascinating about this, is the Bloc had essentially extended this olive branch to the Liberals, saying if you want to get over this document dump impasse over the so-called Green Slush Fund in the House of Commons, give us the royal recommendation. Should we take Minister Guilbeault at his word? I will say there have been times he's come on and said things that the government didn't actually end up intending to do. So jury's out on that. But should he be correct in stating that the government is not interested in pursuing this 10% increase to OAS, the Bloc then are going to take that as, okay, well then we're not going to help you end the impasse in the House. But that could be a blessing right now for the Liberals, because the longer that privilege debate is going on, yes, government bills aren't getting passed, but confidence motions can't be brought. There can't be any sort of challenge of them. And in a time where now we're looking at the Bloc and the Conservatives potentially being in a position to vote non-confidence, the Liberals need to kind of get their ducks in line and start talking to the NDP, maybe?
Right. Yeah, something, right? Like some sort of conversation. But then, Melanie, we come back to, I don't remember, but I am taking notes, your suggestion of a possible prorogation.
So once they get what they want from government, or they've realized that there is no possible chance that they can get what they want from the government, there is no reason for any of these parties to continue down the path of just letting it be and riding the wave until the next scheduled federal election. And I think that you're gonna be shocked. I truly believe this isn't some just make-believe optimism. I'm like this off of camera. I sincerely believe that with all of the evidence that has been provided, there's no prorogation. They don't care about the polls. They think that they are doing the right things for Canadians. They're surrounded by yes men that are giving them extremely horrible advice that's ruining all of our lives, that's ruining our economy, which is why you're seeing people just leave in hordes from Liberal strongholds, and they're going either abstaining from voting or they're voting Conservative or something else, but they have lost tremendous amount of support. And if there ever was a good time to strike, it would be now or in the coming weeks or even months, because it's not going to get any better for the Liberals. And if there's nothing else that anyone can get, why not just call that election and try to have, you know, a different approach with a different government, right? A strong conservative majority.
Does that mean we're closer to that because they're seemingly happy to let Parliament sit in this moment of stasis like this?
They clearly have run out of options. They don't have a plan to get out of this mess. Prorogation is likely their best remedy right now. And the question will be, how long are they going to prorogue for? How long do they have the budget to be able to do that? Could they put government on pause all the way until the new year? I can't wait to see what they do. Like, look, next week we have the foreign interference inquiry. Prime Minister is going to be at that, and I think that would be an interesting moment for them to consider whether they want to prorogue or not. They did that with the WE scandal last time.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in our next segment. But Sabrina, when you consider the options that they have right now, and let's say one few less dance partners that are now sort of in line, I mean, as Rachel suggested, do we now start to see a ramping up of discussions with the NDP, or is it just a continuation? I mean, it's unclear whether or not there are even discussions. We heard from Vash Kapelos at the beginning of the show that, it's unclear where the House leaders are and the conversations that are being had.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that the negotiation with the Bloc isn't off the table. I think that the House leader has been very clear that she is open to that and she's open to conversations about it. We've seen other measures that have come forward to help seniors as well. And I think it's, as we mentioned off the top of the show, it is a historical day on the passing of pharmacare legislation. And, I think that things like that are going to continue to help improve the relationships that they have with the NDP and with the Bloc. I think that there is certainly a procedural question that the Liberals have now, and they do have to figure out how they're going to move forward between the question of privilege and between this deal with either the Bloc and the NDP or the Bloc and the NDP together. I think those are some things that they'll have to consider, but they're going to have to make that decision fairly quickly here. And so I think that they don't have a lot of time on the runway. So I do think that by next week we'll see some movement.
Gerdeton, do you think it's time for the NDP to start upping their demands, realizing that if they are going to be one of the only options that the Liberals have, that they need to put more on the table in terms of asks?
Well, I think what's very clear is that the ball is once again in the court of the NDP. The NDP has a really strong opportunity once again to push forward the priorities that, in their opinion, are the best for Canadians, things like these social expansions of healthcare and dental care and more. We have a very specific mention now of pharmacare. This is really historic. This is the first time we've actually seen legislation to ensure that really important pieces of medication like birth control and diabetes are actually available to Canadians across the board. That's clearly a priority for the NDP. So yeah, the ball's in the court of the NDP, and let's see how much they can continue to push this government to do what's right for Canadians.
Rachel, just in closing, do you think that we start to see that balance shift now with the NDP going, oh, well, look, you want to come back to us now? Let's have other discussions.
If Jagmeet Singh signaled that today, then maybe. But he had a prime opportunity when he was asked by reporters today, are you willing now to say that you're going to prop up the government if they get these deals done? Hold them to the fire to make sure these provinces sign on. And he didn't take that opportunity.
Right.
He said again, the same thing he has said since early September about we're going to go vote by vote. Like, Jagmeet Singh has put nothing on the table in terms of a concrete ask for this Liberal minority. He went into this sitting saying he was going to seek things that were good for Canadians. I have yet to hear him articulate a single thing.
Yeah, but at least he's consistent in his messaging and saying that it'll be voted.
And so once it's 100% finalized, and once he can finally deliver the news to all of his supporters and to Canada, look, I've stayed true to my promise. We've got it. It's done. It's gone through royal assent. We rushed it. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bang. Hey, what else do you want, Canada? What else do you want, supporters? Then at that point, I think it's going to coincide. The timing is going to be perfect with the Bloc saying, hey, time is up, Mr. Trudeau. Time to go put on some different socks because you're no longer Mr. Fancy Socks. And they're going to freaking call it, man. I really, I don't know if I'm convincing myself of believing this, but I certainly, truly believe this to the point where I'm comfortable enough making videos, with my beliefs. So I'd love to know what your beliefs are. Do you think that this is going to be favorable before Christmas? Do you think that we're going to see an election because the Liberal Party has said, hey, we don't care what the polls say. We don't care. We're not proroguing the government. We're not doing nothing. We're going to keep staying true to our beliefs, and their beliefs are leading down a path of a vote of non-confidence being quite successful. So, hey, by that standard, keep going, Liberals. Come on, keep going. We might see an early election, hopefully. Most certainly, it seems likely that we're going to see an early election. But again, I'd love to know your thoughts down below in the comments. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the video. If you haven't yet already, I'd highly encourage you guys, smash the like button and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.